Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel Echo of Life. Let's start. There is a certain kind of loneliness that doesn't always look the way loneliness is supposed to. It's quiet, almost invisible. It hides behind smiles, behind being busy, behind the simple phrase, "I've just had a lot going on." But underneath, there's a quiet ache that never fully leaves. It isn't the loneliness of physical solitude. It's the loneliness of feeling deeply unknown. The sense that if you stepped away for a while, most people wouldn't notice until much later. That if something wonderful or devastating happened, you wouldn't be sure who to tell. This silence grows inside slowly. Not loud, not frantic, but steady. And in time, it begins to reshape how you think, how you see yourself, how you move through your days. People often assume that those without close friends are cold, distant, or indifferent. But that's rarely the whole story. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. Sometimes they feel too deeply. They notice too much. The slight shift in someone's tone, the subtle drop in energy, the smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. And after enough of this noticing, they begin to pull back. Not because they dislike people, but because closeness starts to feel risky. Psychologically, this experience rewires the brain. When you go too long without meaningful social bonds, your mind begins to interpret isolation as a kind of threat. It activates the same neural pathways linked to physical pain. That's why loneliness doesn't only hurt emotionally, it can ache in the body. Your heart rate shifts. Your sleep grows restless. Your mind scans for signs of danger even when none exist. Humans evolved within tribes. To be alone for too long was once a matter of survival. And yet today, you can be surrounded by thousands of voices online and still feel entirely unseen. Because attention is not connection. Validation is not intimacy. There's a difference between being known and being understood. And that's something people without close friends understand in their bones.
I can do this.
Most of them
Everything
didn't
will be
choose this
fine.
path suddenly. It wasn't a decision made one morning. I don't need anyone. More often, it happens slowly, through small disappointments that collect over years. You share something personal and someone brushes it off. You trust someone with a secret and it becomes gossip. You try to open up and feel misunderstood. Eventually, your mind learns a lesson. It's safer not to try, so you stop reaching out. You stop initiating. You tell
Good
yourself
morning.
you prefer your
Good
own
morning.
company. And for a while, you might believe it, solitude can feel peaceful. It offers control. It offers space. But after enough time, solitude shifts from healing to haunting. Because humans are wired for connection. Even the most independent soul still longs to be seen, to be mirrored, to be felt by another presence. When that need goes unmet for too long, something shifts inside. Your inner dialogue grows louder than the world outside. You talk to yourself, not out loud, but in thoughts that loop without end. You replay old memories, old friendships, old disappointments, wondering where things went quiet. Sometimes you blame yourself. Sometimes you blame the world. Often it's neither, it's just the difficult dance between human psychology and human hurt. There's a concept called learned social helplessness. It's when you've tried to connect so many times without success that you unconsciously stop trying altogether. Your brain begins to link reaching out with rejection. So even when you later
It's
meet
going to
kind,
be
open
okay.
people, your guard stays up. You might tell yourself you're fine alone, but somewhere within, you still yearn for that one person who just gets it. The one who doesn't need every little thing explained. Yet the more you want it, the more impossible it feels to find. Loneliness has a way of making you feel unworthy of friendship. It whispers, "You're too much,"
too?
or "You're not enough." It says people have better things to do. And in time, you start to believe it. You reject yourself before anyone else gets the chance. You isolate not from pride, but from self-protection. But here's what's rarely seen. Loneliness doesn't always look sad. Sometimes people without friends appear completely fine. They smile, they work, they create, they even post happy moments online. Yet inside, they live in two realities. The one the world sees and the one they feel. They've built a version of themselves designed to survive without closeness. But that version often feels hollow, like watching their own life from the outside. It's easy to judge people who have no friends, to label them as odd, aloof, or hard to connect with. But if you listen to their stories, you'll often find a thread of quiet heartbreak. Moments where they gave too much to people who didn't care enough to stay. Over time, that heartbreak shapes their sense of self. They begin to link intimacy with risk, vulnerability with regret. So they learn to live without it. But the cost of that adaptation is high. Without real friendship, your world grows smaller. Your emotions echo in your own mind. There's no one to gently challenge your perspective. No one to soften your thoughts. Psychologists note that prolonged social isolation can reduce empathy, not because people stop caring, but because they stop practicing emotional exchange. Empathy is like a muscle. When it's not used, it weakens. So people who live alone for long stretches sometimes become emotionally numb. Not by choice, but as the mind's way of guarding against the pain of unmet connection. And yet, something paradoxical happens. Those without friends often crave deeper connection than anyone. They think about it more. They analyze it. They romanticize it. They search for meaning in every small exchange, every passing smile. Because when something feels rare, you learn to treasure even its faintest glimpse. Loneliness doesn't just shape how you feel, it shapes how you act. Studies suggest that people who've been isolated for a long time can become hyper-aware of social cues. They overthink messages. They imagine disinterest where there is none. They read meaning into silence. Because when you've been overlooked or let down enough, your mind begins searching for signs of it everywhere, even where they don't exist. This creates a cycle. You become cautious. People sense that caution as distance. They assume you're uninterested or cold, and they pull back, reinforcing the very loneliness you're trying to escape. It's not your fault. It's the mind trying to protect itself from further hurt. Loneliness also changes how you experience time. When there's no one to share moments with, time can feel slower. Days blend. Weekends and holidays lose their rhythm because those things matter most when shared. Research has found that loneliness can alter time perception. Minutes feel longer, hours feel heavier. Because when you're disconnected, you're living inside your thoughts rather than in the flow of life. And yet, within this quiet, something beautiful can grow. Solitude, when met with intention, can be transformative. Some of the most self-aware, creative, and emotionally attuned people in history spent long periods alone. The difference lies in whether that solitude is chosen or forced. Chosen solitude heals. Forced solitude hardens. One helps you reconnect with yourself. The other convinces you that you don't deserve to reconnect with anyone. For many without friends, it's not always clear which kind they're living. They say things like, "I'm just not a social person," or "I like my own company." But underneath, they miss the kind of laughter that only comes with someone who truly knows you. The kind where you don't overthink your words. The kind where silence feels warm, not heavy. It's easy to forget that friendship is more than socializing. It's a mirror. It reflects back parts of yourself you might never see alone. Without friends, it's harder to know how you're growing, or if you're growing at all, because we don't just become ourselves in isolation. We become ourselves in reflection. And when that reflection is missing, you can start to feel unreal, as if living in a fog where your existence doesn't echo anywhere. That's the quiet pain of having no friends. Not the pain of loneliness itself, but the pain of invisibility. The pain of existing without witness. Yet beneath that pain often lies an extraordinary depth of empathy. Because they know what it's like to be unseen, they tend to see others more clearly. They're often the ones who notice when someone's left out. They check in quietly because they understand how it feels to go unnoticed. Maybe that's the quiet paradox. Those who have no friends often make the best ones, if only someone would take the time to see them first. There comes a moment, often quiet, when someone who's lived too long in loneliness begins to realize that waiting to be found might not be enough. That healing may not start with finding others, but with remembering who you were before the silence set in. Because real friendship grows where self-trust already lives. If you don't believe your voice matters, you'll quiet it. If you think your needs are a burden, you'll hide them. And so the cycle continues. Unseen, unheard, unspoken. People without friends often live in the shadow of old experiences. Moments when they felt too different, too sensitive, too quiet for the world around them. Maybe as children they were the ones drawing in the corner while others played. Maybe they were kind but not loud enough to be noticed. Maybe they cared about things others didn't. Over time, they began to wear that difference like armor, pretending it didn't hurt, telling themselves they preferred to stand apart. But difference isn't the problem, it's the meaning we attach to it. When you grow up feeling misunderstood, you start believing something must be wrong with you. You edit yourself down. You speak less, feel less, expect less, until you become a version of yourself that might not even fit the people who would have loved the real you. Our brains are wired to belong to tribes, to groups, to someone. It's an ancient survival instinct. But when belonging feels dangerous, when every attempt leads to pain, the mind learns avoidance as protection. Avoidance becomes safety, and safety becomes loneliness. That's why many lonely people seem calm on the surface. Their nervous system has adapted to expect rejection before it happens. They live in constant self-management, trying not to be too much or too visible. What they may not realize is that the longer they do this, the more invisible they become, not only to others but to themselves. It's like dimming your own light to avoid being noticed by the wrong people, only to realize you can't attract the right ones either. Psychologists sometimes speak of the social self-concept, how you see yourself through the imagined eyes of others. If you've spent years being overlooked or excluded, that inner mirror becomes distorted. You start assuming everyone will see you the same way. Even when someone looks at you with kindness, you doubt it. You question their sincerity. That's the cruel trick of prolonged loneliness. It doesn't just separate you from others. It separates you from your own ability to believe you could ever belong. But here's what's true about the human mind. It can learn connection again. It's not permanent. Just as a muscle can regain strength, social trust can rebuild itself through small, steady acts of courage. It starts with tiny gestures. Smiling back when someone meets your eyes, replying to a message without overthinking, saying yes even when you're nervous. It's not about forcing confidence overnight. It's about letting life touch you again, one small interaction at a time. Because friendship doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence, the willingness to show up imperfect and real. What many don't realize is that those who've been lonely for a long time often possess profound emotional depth. They think deeply. They observe quietly. They've spent years watching human behavior from the outside, so they understand things others overlook. They notice sincerity. They sense shifts in energy. They can tell when someone's being authentic or just performing kindness. That's why surface-level friendships rarely satisfy them. They crave depth but also fear it. So they build walls with windows. They want connection, but on terms that feel safe. Through consistency. Through silence that feels warm, not empty. These aren't unreasonable desires. They're deeply human. But another truth remains. Friendship requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels terrifying when you've spent years protecting yourself. You can't form real bonds without emotional exposure. And that exposure can feel like walking barefoot across broken glass when you've been hurt before. So many avoid it altogether. They say they're fine alone, but often, they're just tired of being the only one who tries. Yet here's the paradox. When you stop trying altogether, you confirm the very fear that kept you alone. You prove your own isolation right. That's how the psychology of loneliness sustains itself. Not because you can't connect, but because the mind becomes too afraid to risk the unknown. But what if connection wasn't about being impressive? What if it was about being honest? What if friendship wasn't something you had to earn, but something you simply allowed? The truth is, the people who truly resonate with you won't need a performance. They'll meet you where you are. They'll sense the quiet in you not as absence, but as depth. Sometimes the first step isn't finding new friends. It's grieving the old versions of yourself who settled for less than you deserved. The one who begged for attention. The one who accepted crumbs and called it care. The one who silenced their truth to keep someone near. When you heal those parts, something shifts. You begin to attract from wholeness, not hunger. And that changes everything. There's a strange freedom that arrives when you stop chasing people and start understanding yourself. You begin to see that being alone doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been waiting for alignment. For people who don't just tolerate silence, but bring peace into it. For friendships that feel like breathing, not performing. Loneliness can become a teacher if you let it. It shows you what kind of company your soul truly craves. It reveals the energy you bring into the world. And it pushes you to build an inner life so strong that when the right people finally appear, you can meet them with presence, not fear. Here's a quiet truth. People without friends often become their own closest observers. They develop a self-awareness others might never reach. They reflect, question, grow. And that depth, though born from solitude, becomes the very thing that draws the right people later, the kind who see not just who you are, but who you've become through everything you've endured alone. Healing from long-term isolation takes time. Can't be rushed. It starts with gentle self-acceptance, with learning to speak to yourself the way a kind friend would. When your mind whispers, "No one cares," answer softly, "I'm learning to care for myself." When it says, "You'll always be alone," reply, "I'm still open to being found." Your brain listens. It adjusts. Neural pathways change through repetition, not miracles. The more you affirm the possibility of connection, the more open you become to noticing it when it arrives. And it will, because loneliness is not a permanent state. It's a season, a psychological winter that eventually gives way to new warmth, if you allow yourself to thaw. The truth is, not having friends doesn't make you less human. It just makes your story quieter. But quiet stories can be powerful. They can be filled with art, self-discovery, and meaning. Some of the greatest thinkers, writers, and creators spent years alone before they found their people. And when they did, those connections were deeper, wiser, more grounded, because they had learned to love their own company first. So if you're someone without close friends right now, please hear this: you're not broken. You're not unworthy. You're in the middle of your becoming. The world hasn't forgotten you. It's waiting for you to remember yourself. There will come a day when you'll sit across from someone who looks at you and says, "I feel like I've known you forever." And in that moment, all the years you spent wondering what was wrong with you will make sense. You'll realize solitude was never punishment. It was preparation. Every quiet night, every unanswered message, every invisible ache shaped you into someone who could finally hold real connection when it came. You'll stop craving the crowd and start cherishing the rare. You'll stop chasing attention and start recognizing genuine energy. And you'll understand that friendship isn't about quantity. It's about recognition. It's when two people look at each other and silently think, "You too? I thought I was the only one." Maybe that's the truest kind of friendship there is, not built from constant conversation, but from quiet understanding, from mutual gentleness, from two souls who've both known loneliness and decided together that they don't have to feel it again. Because connection isn't about finding perfect people. It's about finding honest ones. The ones who can sit with your silence, laugh at your quirks, and see beauty in your complexity. Those are the people worth waiting for. And when they come, you'll finally know what it means to be seen. Not the version you created to survive, but the person you were always meant to be. Until then, walk gently with yourself. Speak kindly. And remember, even if no one is standing beside you right now, you are still worthy of being known. You are still worthy of friendship. You are still part of humanity's quiet, invisible thread, connected always, even in your most solitary moments. And maybe one day you'll meet someone else who once had no friends. You'll see it in their eyes, the same stillness, the same understanding. You'll smile and they'll smile back. And just like that, two quiet worlds will find their bridge again. Because loneliness isn't the end of your story. It's just the place where your next chapter begins. Thank you for watching my videos. Please subscribe my channel for more update.